Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a point in every person's life when the opinions, judgments, and actions of others feel like a weight pressing down on your peace. But the truth is, we give people far too much access to our emotions, far too much power to influence our internal world. The time has come to take that power back. This journey begins not outside, but within. Understanding emotional triggers is the first and most essential step in learning how to stop letting people get to you. Emotional triggers are those invisible buttons that, when pushed by someone's words, actions, or even tone, create an immediate and often intense emotional response. These triggers don't just come out of nowhere. They are rooted in our past experience, unresolved pain, insecurities, fears, or unmet needs. When someone criticizes you and you feel rage, shame, or the urge to withdraw, that response is likely tied to a deeper emotional memory or belief that was already living inside you long before that person said anything. In other words, people are not inserting new emotions into your life. They're simply activating what's already there. To stop being controlled by others' actions or opinions, you must become aware of what triggers you and why. Begin by paying close attention to the moments when you feel emotionally hijacked. Ask yourself what exactly was said or done. How did it make you feel? And most importantly, why did it make you feel that way? Let's say someone makes a passing comment about your competence and you feel instantly defensive or crushed. This might point to a deeper insecurity about not being enough or not being respected. That trigger then is less about the person and more about your own unresolved belief that you're not competent. Once you become aware of this internal dialogue, you're no longer operating unconsciously. You can pause and question whether the belief is even true or worth holding on to. This awareness puts distance between the external event and your internal reaction. It helps you see that your emotional response is not necessarily about the present situation, but often a mirror of the past. And that realization is liberating. It gives you the ability to respond with wisdom instead of reacting out of pain. Without this insight, you continue to live as if everyone around you holds the keys to your emotional world, whether that's your boss, a family member, a friend, or even a stranger. Another important thing to understand is that triggers often have nothing to do with logic. You can know rationally that someone's words aren't true, but still feel hurt. That's because emotional triggers bypass your logical thinking and go straight to the emotional centers of the brain. So trying to suppress or ignore your emotions doesn't work. What works is naming the feeling, tracing it back to its root, and deciding whether you want to continue giving it power. The goal is not to become numbed or indifferent, but to become aware. Emotional maturity means recognizing when your buttons are being pushed and choosing not to give others access to them. It's realizing that your peace is too precious to be surrendered. Every time someone says something unpleasant or insensitive, it's about choosing to examine the story your mind is telling you before acting on it. In the end, understanding your emotional triggers is about reclaiming responsibility for your own reactions. is the first and most powerful move in the process of building inner freedom. Once you recognize that you hold the key to your emotional world, not other people, you become unshakable. You no longer get pulled into unnecessary drama or emotional chaos. You stop living at the mercy of others and begin living from a place of stability and strength. That's where true emotional freedom begins. Mastering your self-worth is a transformative process that completely changes how you respond to the world and the people in it. When you truly understand and accept your value, the opinions, judgments, and behaviors of others lose their power to define you. So many people struggle with emotional reactions because their sense of worth is unstable. It is built on what others think, say, or do. If someone compliments them, they feel good. If someone criticizes them, they feel crushed. This dependency on external validation creates a fragile identity that can be shattered with just one unkind word. That is why mastering your self-worth is not just important. It is necessary for emotional independence and inner peace. To master self-worth, you must first understand that your value is inherent. It is not something you earn by being perfect, pleasing others, or achieving a list of accomplishments. You are not more valuable because you are liked, nor are you less valuable because someone disapproves of you. Your worth exists simply because you exist. This truth must become the foundation of your internal life. Without it, you will always be chasing approval and avoiding rejection, constantly trying to fit into molds created by others and sacrificing your authenticity just to feel accepted. The process begins with challenging the false beliefs you have about yourself. Many of these beliefs were formed during childhood or through repeated negative experiences. Maybe someone told you that you weren't good enough, smart enough, or worthy of love. Over time, you internalized these lies and began to live as though they were fact. But self-worth means confronting those lies head on and replacing them with truth. It's reminding yourself daily that you are not broken, that your past does not disqualify you, and that your value is not up for negotiation. Mastering self-worth also requires you to detach your identity from your performance. In a society that constantly measures success in numbers, appearances, and approval, it's easy to tie your worth to what you do or how well you do it. But real self-worth isn't about what you produce. It's about who you are when all the titles, roles, and achievements are stripped away. Can you still look at yourself and say, I matter? That's the question. And when the answer becomes a genuine yes, other people's opinions begin to shrink in significance. Another part of developing true self-worth is practicing self-respect. You cannot expect others to treat you with value if you consistently treat yourself with neglect, harshness, or self-abandonment. Speak to yourself with kindness. Set boundaries that protect your peace. Say no when something doesn't align with your values. Stop apologizing for existing or for not meeting others' unrealistic expectations. The way you treat yourself is a reflection of what you believe about your worth. If you want others to value you, you must first show them how it's done by the way you value yourself. finally understand that mastering self-worth is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice. There will be moments of doubt. There will be people who try to make you question your value. But as long as you keep returning to the truth that your worth is not given by others, then it cannot be taken by them either. You will walk through life more grounded, less shaken, and far less affected by external noise. People may still talk. They may still judge, but you will no longer be controlled by it. You will know who you are, and that is the greatest shield you can ever carry. Setting internal boundaries is one of the most powerful yet often overlooked tools in maintaining emotional well-being. While physical boundaries like keeping distance from harmful people are important, internal boundaries are what determine whether other people's actions, words, or moods are allowed to influence your internal state. They're invisible lines drawn within the mind and heart that define what you accept and what you reject emotionally and mentally. When you have strong internal boundaries, you can be in the presence of negativity, criticism, or manipulation, and still preserve your peace. Without them, you are like a sponge absorbing everything around you, even when it's toxic or untrue. Internal boundaries begin with self-awareness. You must first understand what is yours to carry and what is not. Many people take on the emotional baggage of others without even realizing it. If someone is angry, they feel responsible. If someone is disappointed, they feel guilty. But having internal boundaries means understanding that other people's emotions are not your responsibility to fix. You are not required to carry the weight of someone else's frustration, rejection, or chaos. Their emotions belong to them. You can care without becoming consumed. Another layer of internal boundaries is managing what you allow to enter your mental space. Not every comment deserves a reaction. Not every criticism is worth dwelling on. When someone says something hurtful, your internal boundary is what allows you to say silently, "That's not true about me," and move on. This doesn't mean you ignore feedback or pretend that negativity doesn't affect you. It means you become intentional about what you believe and what you let shape your identity. You don't have to accept every opinion as truth. You don't have to replay every conversation in your mind. You get to decide which voices you allow to influence your thoughts. Developing internal boundaries also means recognizing when your peace is being disturbed and giving yourself permission to step back emotionally. Just because someone invites you into conflict or drama doesn't mean you have to attend. You can witness someone's behavior without engaging in it. You can listen to someone's words without letting them enter your heart. Internal boundaries give you the ability to remain centered even when everything around you feels out of control. You don't need to react to every provocation or prove your point in every disagreement. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is remain calm and unmoved. Internal boundaries also protect you from overextending yourself. Many people struggle to say no. I'm not just with actions, but with emotions. They feel obligated to be available emotionally at all times. But having internal boundaries means knowing when you need to conserve your energy, when you need space to process your own feelings, and when you must say no to emotional labor that drains you. It is not selfish to protect your inner life. It is wise. One of the most liberating realizations is that you don't need anyone else's permission to have these boundaries. They are for you. You don't have to explain them or justify them to people who don't understand. You simply live them. And over time, you'll notice that the more solid your internal boundaries become, the less people are able to rattle you. You'll feel stronger, more grounded, and more at peace, not because the world changed, but because your internal world is now under your control. That is where true emotional resilience begins. Detachment without apathy is a powerful and mature way of navigating relationships, emotions, and conflict. Many people misunderstand detachment, assuming it means becoming cold, distant, or indifferent. But true detachment is not about disconnecting from people. It's about disconnecting from the need to control them or be controlled by them. It's about being fully present in a relationship or interaction, but not emotionally enslaved. You can care deeply and still not crumble when someone disapproves of you. You can love someone and still maintain your identity, values, and peace, even if they choose not to return that love. Detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of strength. When you practice healthy detachment, you no longer seek emotional security from unstable or unpredictable sources. You stop placing your happiness, confidence, and peace in the hands of people who may or may not value them. Instead, you build a life rooted in internal stability. This means you no longer react out of desperation or cling to validation. You don't try to force outcomes or convince people of your worth. You let people be who they are while you remain grounded in who you are. Detachment without apathy allows you to care wisely. There is a difference between compassion and codependence. Compassion says, I care for you, but I will not destroy myself trying to save you. Codependence says, I will sacrifice myself, my boundaries, and my peace just to keep you happy or stay connected to you. The truth is, you can love someone and still walk away if the relationship threatens your mental, emotional, or spiritual health. Detachment gives you that clarity. It helps you recognize when a relationship or situation is no longer healthy, and it empowers you to act not from bitterness, but from self-respect. This mindset also strengthens your emotional responses. When someone mistreats you, offends you, or lets you down, detachment prevents you from taking it personally. You understand that people's behavior often reflects their own wounds, fears, or limitations. It is rarely a true reflection of your worth. Detachment helps you say, this isn't about me, and move on without carrying unnecessary emotional weight. It allows you to stay connected to your truth instead of being pulled into someone else's emotional storm. Another benefit of this approach is that it creates space for better communication and deeper relationships. When you're not constantly reacting or seeking approval, you're able to listen more clearly, respond more thoughtfully, and maintain peace even in disagreement. People are often drawn to those who are emotionally centered. Your calm presence becomes a stabilizing force in a world full of emotional chaos. But it's important to note that detachment is a practice. It takes time, intentionality, and emotional It means learning how to pause before reacting, how to sit with uncomfortable feelings without letting them control you, and how to return to your center when someone tries to pull you away from it. It requires reminding yourself often that you are not here to fix people, control outcomes, or sacrifice your peace for temporary comfort. Ultimately, detachment without apathy is an act of deep self-love. It is a decision to stay whole in a world that constantly tries to pull you apart. It means giving up the illusion of control and embracing the freedom of emotional sovereignty. When you learn to love without losing yourself, to care without collapsing, and to stay open without becoming vulnerable to emotional manipulation, you become unshakable. And in that strength, you find peace, power, and clarity. Responding instead of reacting is one of the most vital emotional skills a person can develop if they want to stop letting people get to them. At first glance, the difference between reacting and responding may seem subtle, but in practice, it is the line that separates emotional chaos from emotional intelligence. A reaction is immediate, impulsive, and driven by emotion. It often comes from a place of hurt, fear, or ego. A response, on the other hand, is deliberate, thoughtful, and rooted in awareness. It creates space between what happens to you and how you choose to handle it. That space is where maturity lives, and learning to live in that space changes everything. When you react, you're essentially giving the other person control over your emotional state. Someone says something rude, and you lash out. Someone criticizes you, and you immediately defend yourself or shut down. In these moments, your emotions are in the driver's seat, and you are simply a passenger. Reactions often make things worse, deepen conflict, and leave you feeling powerless or regretful. They are automatic, fueled by past wounds and unconscious programming. You may not even realize how much you're being controlled by these old patterns until you take a moment to pause. Responding breaks that pattern. It begins with the decision to slow down. When you feel triggered or provoked, instead of acting right away, you learn to take a breath and observe what's happening inside you. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Why does this bother me so much? Is this situation really about what's happening now, or is it touching on something deeper from my past? These questions create a gap between the stimulus and your reaction, giving you time to choose a more constructive response. This simple shift from reactivity to reflection is what gives you true control. Responding does not mean suppressing your feelings or pretending everything is okay when it's not. It means acknowledging your emotions without allowing them to dictate your behavior. It's okay to feel angry, hurt, or frustrated. Those feelings are valid, but the power lies in what you do with those emotions. Do you let them explode outward, causing damage to others and yourself? Or do you process them and speak from a place of clarity and strength? When you respond, you are still honest, still expressive, but you do it with wisdom. This approach also builds respect in relationships. When you respond instead of react, people see that you are composed, confident, and not easily manipulated. You stop playing emotional tug-of-war with others. They may try to provoke you, but your calm and measured response shows them that you are not someone who can be pushed around emotionally. Over time, people learn that their words and behavior cannot control you, and they begin to treat you with more respect, or they fall away because they can no longer control the narrative. Learning to respond takes practice. It requires patience and a willingness to do the inner work. You will still slip at times and react in ways you regret. That's part of the growth process. But each time you pause, each time you choose a thoughtful response over an impulsive reaction, you strengthen your emotional discipline. Eventually, it becomes second nature. You become less and less affected by what others do or say, and more grounded in your own values and truth. Responding is not weakness. It is strength under control. It is emotional maturity in action. It allows you to navigate difficult situations with grace and stand firm in your integrity, regardless of how others behave. And once you master this skill, you will find that the same people and situations that once triggered you no longer have the same. You're no longer being pulled into emotional chaos. You're leading from a place of peace. The power of silence and self-control is often attained in a world that encourages quick reactions, loud opinions, and constant expression. But silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the quiet strength that allows you to maintain your dignity and protect your peace, especially when others are trying to provoke a reaction. Self-control is not about suppressing your emotions. It is about choosing your response carefully and refusing to give your energy to things that do not deserve it. Together, silence and self-control create an internal fortress that shields you from the chaos and negativity of others. When someone disrespects you, insults you, or tries to pull you into conflict, your instinct may be to speak up, defend yourself, or fight back. That instinct is normal, but it doesn't always serve you. Not everyone is worth engaging with. Not every argument needs to be won. Sometimes silence says more than any words ever could. It tells the other person that they no longer have access to your emotional state. It tells them you have risen above the need to prove, explain, or justify yourself. Your silence becomes your power. It is a refusal to be controlled by someone else's emotional immaturity. Self-control is the ability to pause before you respond, to choose wisdom over impulse. It's what keeps you from texting something you'll regret, yelling when silence would say more, or reacting to every slight and offense that comes your way. Self-control gives you space to think, reflect, and choose a response that aligns with your character, not just your emotions in the heat of the moment. This is not easy, especially when you're feeling hurt or attacked. But the more you practice it, the more you'll notice that you feel stronger, not weaker, for holding back. You walk away with your integrity intact and your peace unbroken. People often confuse silence with giving up or being passive. But real silence is active. It is a choice, not a retreat. It's the conscious decision to disengage from toxicity, to not feed the fire of conflict, and to not let someone else's chaos invade your. It takes more strength to remain silent in the face of provocation than it does to lash out. In silence, you reclaim your emotional authority. You send a message not just to others, but to yourself. I don't need to fight for my value. I don't need to shout to be heard. I already know who I am. One of the greatest benefits of practicing silence and self-control is that you conserve your emotional energy. Arguing, defending yourself constantly, or being pulled into others' emotional storms is exhausting. It drains your mental clarity, clouds your judgment, and keeps you emotionally reactive. But when you choose silence, you preserve your energy for things that matter. You become more intentional with your words, more focused with your attention, and more stable in your emotions. You don't get drawn into every battle because you know not every battle is worth fighting. In time, silence and self-control become your natural response. You will find that many situations don't even require a reply. The best response to some people is no response. The best defense is no reaction. Not because you're afraid, but because you're wise enough to know it's not worth it. And this discipline begins to shape every part of your life, your relationships, your self-esteem, your decisions. You live more freely because you are no longer controlled by the noise around you. Ultimately, silence and self-control are signs of emotional maturity. They are not about avoiding confrontation or being passive. They are about choosing peace over performance, wisdom over ego, and clarity over chaos. When you master these two traits, people no longer get to pull you into their emotional drama. You remain still, centered, and in command of yourself. And that, in a loud and reactive world, is a quiet revolution. In conclusion, learning how to stop letting people get to you is not about changing the world or silencing others. It's about mastering yourself. It begins with understanding your emotional triggers so that you no longer react blindly to every comment or behavior. It requires building an unshakable sense of self-worth that is not defined by others' approval or criticism. It involves setting strong internal boundaries to protect your peace and practicing healthy detachment so you can care without being consumed. It calls for choosing thoughtful responses over impulsive reactions and recognizing the quiet strength found in silence and self-control. When you commit to this inner work, you begin to walk through life with a steady confidence. You stop being pulled into emotional chaos and start living with intention, clarity. And people may still talk. They may still try to provoke or challenge you, but their actions no longer have the ability to disrupt your inner world. You remain rooted in who you are, undisturbed by who they are. And that is where true freedom begins. Not when the world becomes quiet, but when your soul